Today, we're going to talk about the loneliness of loss. And if you're here, it's likely you're navigating a deep and isolating loneliness that can follow the loss of someone you love. First, let me say this. I see you, I've been there, and my heart aches for you. Loneliness can feel like an invisible weight, especially when you've lost someone who was your constant companion or the light of your life. For me, that loneliness hit hard after the deaths of my 19-year-old son, Eric, and then my husband, Jim. I've been married to Jim for 44 years. I got married at 19. It's the first time in my life that I was alone. Grief and loneliness are pains that are hard to describe, but I'm here to share my story and offer 5 tips that help me move through that loneliness and rediscover meaningful connection. Let's navigate this together. Tip number 1, acknowledge the loneliness. The first step in healing is acknowledging the depth of your loneliness. After I lost my son and later my husband, I felt as though I'd been dropped into a void, the deep pit of grief, the very bottom of it. My home was too quiet. The nights were too long. It was as if the world kept moving forward, but I was standing still, frozen in time. It's okay to name that feeling and sit with it for a moment. Pretending it isn't there won't make it go away. Write it down, speak it out loud, pray about it. Acknowledging your loneliness doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. At one point, I remember coming back from a hospital after my husband had died, laying in the bed and thinking, if I died, I wonder how long it would take for them to find my body. That's how far down you get. Loneliness takes you places you don't really want to go. The second tip is to accept help when it's offered. That's hard for me sometimes. When you're grieving, it's tempting to isolate ourselves. I know, I did it. After losing Eric and then my husband, there were days I wanted to shut the world out entirely. But one of the greatest lessons I learned is that loneliness can't be fought alone. When friends or family offer to help, whether it's through a meal, a phone call, or an invitation to coffee, accept it. They might not always know what to say or what to do, but their presence can be a lifeline for you. Don't be afraid to lean on others when your own strength fails. Tip number 3, find ways to honor their memory. One way I began to navigate my loneliness was finding ways to honor the memory of Eric and my husband. For Eric, I created memorial libraries in Rwanda. Now that's kind of a big, it was kind of a big thing. It just kind of happened. There's 65 of them now, over 350,000 books. But the reality is it doesn't have to be big. It can be a small memorial keepsake with his photos in it. Same thing with my husband. We created a little book with pictures of his, and really in his own words. We asked him before he passed away to give us his life story, and he did that. He also has libraries in Rwanda as well. I kind of put a few there as well. But try to find ways to remember them. It's extremely important when you've lost someone you love. Don't be afraid to share those stories with others, and make it easy for others to share those stories with you. Some of the most wonderful times that I had, some of the most connecting times I've had over the last few years was just hearing stories about how my husband and my son touched the lives of other people. It's very rewarding. You might be a while before you can hear them, but at some point, welcome them, welcome the stories, welcome the talk. Honoring the memories of my son and my husband gave me a sense of connection with them, even in their absence. Whether it's planting a tree, starting a scholarship fund, or simply carrying on a tradition they loved, these acts can bring moments of comfort and remind you that their love remains part of your life. And traditions are very important. My husband liked to make lefse at Christmas. It's a Norwegian flatbread, and we continue to do that to this day. Christmas and at Thanksgiving, we make lefse. It's wonderful. Tip number 4, seek community. One of the hardest parts of grief is feeling like no one truly understands what you're going through. That's why seeking a community is especially important. 2 days after my husband died, I got a call from a dear friend who wanted to start a widows group because her friends all around here were becoming widows. She was not a widow yet, which is interesting, but her friends were becoming one. And she knew I needed support. She called me, and within a week, I was in a support group of widows who understood what I was going through. And we still meet 4 years later. We're still meeting once a week. It's one of the best things I ever did. And those women who I didn't know at the time are very dear friends now. It's important to find a space where you can share your story without fear of judgment because some crazy things happen to you when you go through grief. Your brain goes to places you don't really want to admit to all the time. And when you have people around you that have been there, they understand, and it helps in the healing. If you're a person of faith, your church might be a source of connection and strength. And if in-person groups feel overwhelming, there are virtual communities. Our community occurred during COVID. It was a virtual community, and it continues to be. People are all over the world, all over the country in our group. The key is finding people who can walk alongside you as you navigate your grief. And tip number 5 is rediscover your purpose. As the loneliness began to lift in my life, I realized that I still had purpose. God was done with my husband. His race had been run, but he still had plans for me. I didn't know what they were, but I was still here. I still had things to give. It took a while to kind of get that internalized. I mean, we kind of know it in our head, but it kind of takes the heart a while to catch up. But doing so made a huge difference in how I managed loneliness. Losing Eric and my husband left a void, but it also deepened my understanding of what it means to love and to live. I knew I had to use my pain to help others get through theirs because I had people coming in to help me get through mine, and it was my turn now to use that to help other people get through theirs. Over time, I became a death doula. I wrote 3 books. I was not a writer. I wrote 3 books. And writing books is very therapeutic, and it's very easy to do these days. And I launched a podcast with my dear friend, fellow widow from the Widows Group, Kathy Dempsey, called Rethinking Death.life. And that is very healing for me. We laugh, we cry. It's an amazing therapy for all of us. These endeavors didn't just erase my loneliness, but they gave me a reason to get up in the morning and to move forward. Rediscovering purpose is about finding what brings you meaning. Sometimes that purpose grows from the pain that you endured. Loneliness after loss is a journey, one that takes time, patience, and a lot of grace for yourself. If you're feeling lost, I want you to know this: you are not alone. Your loved ones may be gone, but their love remains with you. And so does your capacity to connect, to heal, to find joy again. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need encouragement today. In the comments, let me know what's one way you found connection or comfort during your grief journey. Thank you for being here, and remember, even in the darkest moments, there is hope. You are loved, and your story is far from over.